Welcome to the Cosmic Mystic Podcast, the space for healers, coaches, and conscious leaders on a mission to elevate collective consciousness. I'm your host, Danie C. Muniz, a former Catholic disciple turned eclectic witch, guiding you through the realms of astrology, spirituality, and the quest to escape the matrix. It's time to unleash the mystic within. Let the transformation begin. Hey, my friend. Welcome back to the Cosmic Mystic. Danie C. Muniz here. And I want to share with you something a client recently told me. We were wrapping up our session and she paused. You know, like how you pause when you're surprised about something and you're about to say something. And she was like, we never talk about my business. And yet I am doing more in my business than I ever have. Now, she wasn't complaining about this. She was taken aback, right? She was still trying to catch up with the math that was mathing. And now I've heard some version of that sentence more times than I can count. And every single time there's the same quality of surprise that each person has. It's like they're reporting on something that shouldn't be possible. It logically doesn't make sense. Today I want to explain why that happens, because I think understanding the why is actually one of the most useful things that I can offer you, my friend, whether you ever work with me or not. Now, when somebody comes to work with me, they usually come with a problem. You know, sometimes it's like, Danie, I keep self-sabotaging myself in business, or I'm hitting a revenue ceiling, or I freeze when it's time to sell, things aren't working out. Or I get hey, I'm not being productive. I'm not maximizing my time, right? Sometimes it's a little bit more personal where it's, the same dynamic in a relationship that keeps happening over and over, or there's a challenge in a relationship and they're not sure what to do, or whether they should leave the relationship, try to work on the relationship, right? Or there's something with family, right? That's a little complicated. Sometimes it's I'm reacting in ways that I don't want to react, right? And I don't know how to stop it. Or fear, right? Fear, I have a lot of fear around whatever, visibility, selling, relationships, whatever it might be. And so fear is driving the ship. Now, sometimes they're together, right? Sometimes, which I probably is most common, is the business and the personal life, there's struggles or there's challenges. And sometimes, right, we might see that as, I know I'm struggling in business, which is why I'm struggling in my personal life. Or I know I'm struggling in my personal life, which is probably why I'm struggling in my business. And what almost everyone expects when they come in, because this is what we see out in the world, is that we're going to work on the thing that they said, right? So if it's a business revenue thing, it's we're going to work on that revenue thing. If it's a pattern that they're seeing in their relationship, we're going to work on that pattern, right? If it's self-sabotage, we're going to work on self-sabotage. And I mean, yeah, that's generally what we do, right? You name the problem and your coach, your healer, your guide, your therapist, whoever it is, they're going to address that problem. Here's what actually happens. So when I work with my clients, we go somewhere else entirely, because the thing that they are naming is usually not where the problem lives. So I want you to think about, you might have heard this concept before about a tree, right? And I also when I think about this, I also think of Titanic. It's with a tree, right? Or even with, we can see the branches, right? We can see the trunk, we can see the branches, we can see the leaves. We can see which ones are thriving, which ones might be struggling, right? We can see the shape of it, right, from the outside. But what's happening in the branches is what's happening in the root, right? If the root has something wrong, if it's compromised in some way, if it's working from a limited space, right? It's going to show up in the branches. Eventually, right? Everything above the ground reflects what's happening underground. This is one of the concepts of as within, so without. Here's what's really interesting, right? So the roots of how we operate in the world, these were established. We know this, right? Long before we knew what they were, right? We made decisions about things, right? Not consciously, but things in our nervous system, things in our belief system, in our unconscious about what was safe, what wasn't, right? What we were allowed to do, to want, who we were allowed to be, how were allowed to show up, about love and the costs of that, the sacrifices, like all of that, right? All of those decisions became our own roots, and everything grew from there, right? Our relationships, how we lead ourselves, how we lead others, money, right? Even so much as the ceiling that we hit in our businesses or in what we believe we can do, right? If we're in a career, we're moving up the corporate ladder, like we can only get to this position, right? Those are all of our branches. When you do the work only on the branches, you can absolutely make progress, right? The tree can still last. It can still like have that outside appearance, but the roots below are still growing the same way they have. And eventually those branches are going to return to whatever is in the root, right? So this is why people can do years of mindset work, years of working on a strategy in their business, years of surface level coaching, and find themselves still in the same patterns over and over again. The work is only going to the branches, right? It's not going to the root. So I'll tell you about a client that I had, and it's really interesting. So when I had met her at this networking event, she was in the financial advisory field at the time, and she wanted to meet up with me because I had said some things when we were networking that like really piqued her interest, and they were around productivity. And she was like, I know I could be doing better. Like, I know I could be more productive. I'm just not motivated. Like, I have to like really work at it really hard. And, the company she was with, they have a system, right? And she was following the system and wasn't quite seeing the results that she wanted. And so when we started, right, like automatically you think, okay, productivity, we're going to start looking at her schedule. Yes, that is part of what we did. Like, how is she using her time, right? What was actually at the root, though, was how worthy she felt about herself. One of the reasons why she wasn't taking action on the things, right, was because she didn't feel worthy of having the success that she wanted. In fact, she felt like she was the same girl that used to wait tables at Denny's, which was only a few years ago. She had worked, right, and got this position as a financial advisor, but the way that she felt about herself, the way that she felt about how she could serve these people. Yes, she had knowledge and information, but the version of her that was actually leading was the version of her that was broke, that was working, to get tips, that was working all hours of the night to make ends meet in a job that she hated. That's who she was. That's who she believed she was on a very unconscious level. And so when we started working on allowing her to let go of that version of her and to step into the powerful version of who she is, that's when things started to shift. Her productivity 100% went up. The sales came in. The sales came in, the opportunities came in, the team she was building started to grow, and she started to feel way more confident about herself. Here's why this isn't surprising, but yet it is. We have been trained, right, by the personal development culture, coaching culture, all of self-help, right, to think of the different areas of our lives as separate problems that require separate solutions. So if you have a business problem, you get a business solution. You have a relationship problem, you get a relationship solution. You have a mindset problem, you get a mindset solution. And I will say there's logic to that, right? It's not wrong. What it does is it misses something that is fundamental to how we actually work. Because my friend, we are not separate compartments. I tried that. I tried to separate all the things in my life. I tried to keep them all separate. Work was work. My personal life was my personal life. My family life was my family life. And I was, running as a different person in each one of those areas of my life and not realizing that every single area of my life, I was one person that was running on one operating system in each one of those areas of my life. Even though I tried to keep them separate, I wasn't, right? So the way that you handle uncertainty in your business or in your career is the same way that you're handling uncertainty in your relationships. The same nervous system, the same belief system is the one running the show. So the ceiling that maybe you're hitting in revenue, in income, is going to be that same ceiling if you keep hitting on, right? If you keep hitting it. So like if you keep hitting in your revenue, like that ceiling is always the same ceiling that you keep hitting in how much you let yourself either be known, be seen, right? The same original decision is drawing both of those lines. So the pattern in how you lead your team, right? The same thing, the same power. It's the same pattern in how you lead yourself when nobody's watching. So this is why the changes that show up weren't ones that we were looking for, because we changed it at the root, which is what is feeding all of it. And so when that root shifts, everything begins to shift, right? Not because we're talking about those things specifically, because we didn't need to, right? So the same client, she came to, back in the day when I used to hold in-person retreats, which I'm so excited to get back to. And I had this in-person retreat up in the mountains in Big Bear, and we worked on our values. It's one of the things I do at every single one of my retreats. I've been doing it for years, and we look at our values. Nowadays, I call it our life purpose manual. And we were looking at her values, and there was a values conflict. So yes, my friend, you can have a values conflict. Values conflict basically means that two things that you value are in competition with each other, or are they're affecting each other in a very challenging way. And so she had a values conflict around love and family. And it's funny because she's right, the same client that had come to me around business. And we were, right, she was growing her financial advisory business. And what she didn't tell me, and what I didn't know at the time, was that she was struggling, right, in her personal relationships, specifically in her intimate relationships, right, finding a partner. And this values conflict around family and love, there was so much wrapped into this conflict between the two that, right, she kept she kept saying, but family is love, but family is love, but family is love, right? And her relationship with her family from the outside perspective looked great. And yet, when we were digging into it a little bit more, there was a lot of trauma there. And within that trauma is where she had created a whole lot of beliefs about relationships. And so as we started to work through those experiences, right, some inner child healing, really releasing the energy around those experiences, she started to, like, first off, just knowing that there was a conflict in her values was huge. But then starting to work and shifting the energy around it, getting to that root, she then was able to see something different, to see a possibility. And it's funny, my love gave her a tarot reading that at that retreat. And she came up with 3 different opportunities in that realm, which is so funny. It's like that whole retreat she had come to in the very beginning was all around, like, she was so focused on business. And I opened up that lens to show her, hey, we have different areas of our life that are all working together. And my friend, this had to be like 8 years ago. I think like 2019 was the last time I held an in-person retreat, and she was there. And she had these 3 different pathways, these 3 opportunities that were opening up for her in the realm of relationships. And I'm happy to say that now she has a couple of kids. She's got 2 kids. I believe she's pregnant with her 3rd. And she's in a beautiful relationship. And I can tell you that, going through these things, like, not only did, working on her values shift that relationship energy that she had, because that's something that we were not even looking at, right? We were so focused. She was so focused on, I just need to be successful in my job, in what I'm doing, that not realizing that all these other connections and ties were actually blocking her from living a life that felt more fulfilled, right? She was so focused on success of business, that she was just pushing away all the personal stuff. This is why when we do that root work, you're also going to see it in other areas of your life, and you're going to see possibilities that you never saw possible before, or you never even thought, right, needed to be on the radar. So I'm going to tell you this, like, if you have been working in your business or on your business, or maybe even working in your career, and like you've worked with the strategy, right? And you've got the support, but you keep hitting the same ceiling. I want you to consider that it might not be the business that's the problem, or the career that's the problem. It might not even be the strategy, right? Everything might be exactly what it needs to be. It might be the right strategy, the right offer, the right positioning, the right marketing, right? And it might be something different. If all of that is in place, look at the root. The ceiling in your business or your career or your relationships, whatever that might be, right? There's decisions that correspond to those that existed before the business, before the career, before that opportunity, before the relationship, right? It's about what you were allowed to have or are allowed to have. It's about what happens when you're fully seen, whether success at that level that you're striving for is actually safe to have. This is root work. This is shadow work. This is inner child work, ancestral work, right? This is why we do that work. It's the work. I say it all the time, like, do the work. This is what I'm referring to. I'm referring to doing that inner work, getting to that root, shifting it on all aspects, the mental level, the physical level, the spiritual level, right? The emotional levels, shifting the energy around it completely. Because that, my friend, when you do that, that's where the change happens, and we never have to talk about your business. If this episode, my friend, raised a question that you want to sit with, or maybe you heard something in here for yourself in one of those stories, maybe you even heard yourself, I want you to know that there is a next step. There is a 30-minute conversation. It's down in the show notes for you. That is a real conversation between you and I. And to see, right, whether this work that I'm talking about here is something that you're looking for. And maybe you are one of my clients. Maybe you have already worked with me, or maybe you're working with somebody else, but you know somebody who has been doing all the right things in their job or in their business or in their relationships, and they're still hitting some kind of ceiling. I invite you to send this to her, because sometimes the most useful thing that you can offer someone is a different place to look. My friend, this brings our episode to an end. And keep in mind that if you are not subscribed to the podcast, to be sure to subscribe. I would love if you would subscribe. Down in the show notes, I also got our daily spiritual practice. It's a 7-minute audio meditation and grounding that I highly, highly recommend. It involves the body, the emotions, and the mental aspect of you, the mind. And so it's called a Body Up somatic practice. It's a beautiful practice that you can do every single day that I highly recommend. And until next time, my friend, remember to keep shining your unique light.